You are home alone and suddenly feel a tightness in your chest, cold sweat, difficulty breathing. The most terrifying thought of your life takes over. I am having a heart attack. So I'm going to give you three actions right now before any explanation, because if you are going through this while watching this video, every second counts. First, call 911 immediately. Second, sit or lie down on the floor and start coughing forcefully, deep and repeated every 2 seconds. Third, find the point between the thumb and index finger of your hand and press firmly while breathing slowly. These three actions can be the difference between surviving or not. The CDC estimates that 8 under 5,000 Americans suffer a heart attack every year, and a significant proportion of deaths happen in the first few hours while the person is still at home without help, losing heart muscle with every minute that passes without action. Studies published in 2023 show that acting correctly in the first 5 minutes can increase survival chances by up to 50%. 50%. This is not a small statistic. It is the difference between going home in 2 days with minimal damage or never being the same again. But here is what most people don't know. Performing these three actions the wrong way can be almost as dangerous as not performing them at all. There is a specific angle for the chest blow that, if done incorrectly, can fracture the sternum. There is a way to press the point on the hand that produces no effect if you don't know exactly where to locate it. And there is a breathing pattern that needs to accompany each technique. Without it, the benefit is cut in half. Furthermore, throughout this video, I will show you the signs that a heart attack sends weeks before it happens and that most Americans completely ignore. The atypical symptoms that especially affect women over 60 and have cost lives that could have been saved, and the nighttime habits that silently increase cardiac risk while you sleep. Stay until the end, because the most powerful technique on this list is also the least known, and you will understand why it works in a way that will completely change what you do when you feel the first symptoms. Tell me in the comments now, did you know about these three actions before watching this video? Yes or no? Write it here. Mr. Thomas was 68 years old, retired, lived alone in a quiet suburb of Nashville, and was exactly the type of patient every cardiologist wants to have. Disciplined, punctual, took his medication without fail, went to routine appointments, and walked 30 minutes every morning. One Tuesday in October, while watching television on the sofa after dinner, he felt a discomfort in his chest that he mentally described as indigestion. The meal had been heavy, and he rationalized it. He waited 5 minutes to see if it would pass. It didn't. He waited five more. The pain began to radiate to his left arm. Even so, he thought, I'll lie down. Maybe it's gas. I'll call the doctor tomorrow. It was exactly these 14 minutes of hesitation. 14 minutes waiting for it to pass. 14 minutes rationalizing. 14 minutes without calling 911 and without applying any emergency technique. That determined the outcome of his night. When the neighbor found him an hour later, Mr. Thomas was on the floor unconscious. He survived, but arrived at the hospital with 40% of his heart muscle permanently compromised. Today, he lives with chronic heart failure, cannot climb a flight of stairs without shortness of breath, and at the last appointment, he looked me in the eyes and said a phrase I never forgot. Doctor, I knew something was wrong. I chose to wait, and I'll never know what would have happened if I had acted in that first minute. Mr. Thomas didn't die from bad luck. He didn't die from a lack of access to the healthcare system. Part of his heart died because no one had ever taught him what to do in those first critical minutes, and because the fear of being wrong was greater than the fear of being right. This is the mistake I don't want you to make. And that is exactly why in the next sections of this video, I will show you the three actions that Mr. Thomas didn't know. And if he had known, they could have preserved the heart he lost that October night. Tell me in the comments now, have you ever ignored a chest symptom hoping it would pass on its own? Write it here, because the answer will tell me how much this hesitation is still putting lives at risk every day. To understand why the precordial thump works, you need to understand that the heart is an electrical system. Each beat is the result of an electrical impulse that travels a very specific path inside the heart muscle, synchronizing the contraction so that it pumps blood efficiently to the entire body. When something goes wrong in this electrical chain during a heart attack, the heart can enter a chaotic rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. Instead of beating in a coordinated way, it quivers inefficiently without pumping real blood to vital organs. It is the electrical equivalent of a short circuit. And the precordial thump works precisely like a rudimentary defibrillator made with your own hands, a precise physical impact on the chest that generates a small amount of mechanical energy capable, in certain circumstances and within a specific window of time, of reversing this arrhythmia and restoring a more functional heart rhythm. A study published in 2020 in the Journal of Cardiology documented that this procedure, when applied in the first 3 minutes after the onset of symptoms, can reestablish the rhythm in certain types of arrhythmia, creating an additional window of time for professional help to arrive. The correct technique is specific in every detail, and these details matter as much for effectiveness as for safety. Close your dominant hand into a firm fist and locate the exact spot in the center of the sternum, the bone in the middle of the chest between the two sides of the rib cage, approximately at the level of the nipples. Use the bottom part of your fist, the pinky finger side, not the knuckles, and apply a sharp, firm blow from top to bottom 5 to 6 times at the rhythm of approximately 1 blow per second. It is not a blow of anger, it is not a random impact. It is a precise and controlled blow like a hammer hitting a specific nail at a specific point. Three critical errors to avoid: striking too high toward the throat, striking too low toward the abdomen, and exceeding 6 blows in a single application. And an important warning: if you have diagnosed osteoporosis or known bone fragility, discuss this technique specifically with your doctor before including it in your personal emergency protocol. For Mrs. Catherine, a 68-year-old patient from Arizona who woke up in the middle of the night with that classic chest pressure, she immediately called 911 and then applied this technique while waiting for the ambulance that took 11 minutes to arrive. The paramedics found her conscious, able to communicate symptoms clearly, and in significantly better condition than they often find patients who remained passive during the wait. Tell me in the comments, had you ever heard of the precordial thump? Write it here. When the subject is a cardiac emergency, the last thing most Americans expect to hear from a cardiologist is a recommendation based on traditional Chinese medicine. But let me be completely direct. What I am going to teach you now is not mysticism. It is not alternative medicine without a scientific basis. What has happened in the last 2 decades is that Western universities with contemporary scientific methodology have begun to investigate traditional Chinese medicine pressure points with the same rigor they apply to any other therapeutic intervention. The EGU point, also known as Hegu, is located between the thumb and index finger of the hand, specifically at the highest point of the muscle that forms when you bring these two fingers together. A study published in 2021 documented that stimulating this point can reduce blood pressure, slow and accelerated heart rate, and increase brain oxygenation in acute stress situations. Three effects that are precisely what a heart under heart attack needs most in that critical moment. A second study published in 2023 found a reduction of up to 10% in blood pressure with the correct application of this technique over 2 minutes of stimulation. For Mr. George, a 73-year-old patient from Atlanta who felt symptoms while home alone, it was the combination of the EGU point with controlled breathing that kept him conscious during the 14 minutes it took for help to arrive. The correct way to execute this is specific and determines whether you will feel the real effect or simply press your hand without producing the neurological stimulus we seek. Place both hands with palms facing down, one over the other. With the thumb of the top hand, look for the soft spot between the thumb and index finger of the bottom hand. You will feel a small muscular elevation in this region, and by pressing on that specific point, you will feel a sensation of intense pressure or numbness that radiates slightly. This sensation is the signal that you have found the correct point. Maintain firm pressure for 5 seconds, release for 2 seconds, and repeat this cycle for 1 full minute on each hand, always breathing in the pattern of 4 seconds on inhalation and 6 seconds on exhalation without interrupting this rhythm. Breathing is not optional. It is an integral part of the mechanism, and without it, the effect is cut in half. The most common mistakes are pressing with excessive force, not breathing deeply during the pressure because panic is making breathing fast and shallow, and abandoning the technique before completing the full minute on each hand. Find the point right now while watching, press and feel where it is on your own body, because in an emergency moment, you won't have time to look for it. Tell me in the comments, had you ever heard of the EGU point? Write it here. Most Americans over 60 who worry about heart health focus almost exclusively on what happens during the day, meals, exercise, medication, and completely ignore the two windows of the day that are, from a cardiovascular standpoint, the most critical of all. In the morning, cortisol spikes before you even open your eyes, blood is thicker after hours without fluid, and platelet aggregability, the tendency of platelets to clump together and form clots, peaks exactly in this window. It is no coincidence that the majority of heart attacks in Americans over 60 happen between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. One habit that research documents with solid evidence is placing a glass of room temperature water on your nightstand before going to sleep and drinking it before getting up while still lying down. Studies document a reduction of up to 62% in morning cardiac events in adults who practice this habit consistently. At night, the heart finally slows down, but this deceleration only happens properly when the right conditions are present. A study published in the European Heart Journal documented that adults with regular exposure to blue light from screens in the 2 hours before bed had significantly higher nighttime blood pressure. And elevated nighttime pressure is a predictor of cardiovascular risk that cardiologists consider more significant than daytime pressure for long-term risk assessment. What you do in the 2 hours before bed largely determines the quality of the cardiac rest the heart will receive. And a heart that doesn't rest properly at night wakes up more vulnerable in the morning, creating exactly the cycle of vulnerability that transforms a stable plaque into a ruptured one. Three specific changes I recommend to all patients over 60. First, eliminate blue light screens in the 2 hours before bed. Second, avoid heavy meals in the 2 hours before bed, especially those high in saturated fat and sodium, which increase blood viscosity and overload the heart during the hours when it should be resting. Third, establish a consistent sleeping and waking time because irregular schedules create social jet lag that dysregulates the circadian rhythms of cortisol, blood pressure, and heart rate in ways that the European Heart Journal associates with a 26% increase in cardiovascular risk in adults with a variation of more than 2 hours between weekdays and weekends. Mr. Thomas slept irregularly, used his phone in bed until falling asleep, and rarely drank water upon waking. Three nighttime and morning habits that each individually increased cardiovascular vulnerability and that together created the perfect environment for that Tuesday in October heart attack. Tell me in the comments, do you use your phone or watch television until moments before sleep? Write it here. Diet is the modifiable cardiovascular risk factor that you control 3 times a day, every day for the rest of your life. And no other health decision has this frequency of cumulative impact on the coronary arteries we are trying to protect. What modern cardiology knows with consistency that transcends nutritional fads is that there are dietary patterns that reduce vascular inflammation and plaque formation over time, and patterns that accelerate these processes in documented and measurable ways. The foods that most consistently appear in the literature as heart protectors start with fatty fish, wild salmon, sardines, tuna, mackerel, exceptional sources of long-chain omega-3s with natural anti-inflammatory and anticoagulant properties. Harvard Medical School identified the regular consumption of fatty fish as one of the dietary factors with the greatest impact on reducing the risk of death from heart disease, with consumption of 2 servings per week associated with a reduction of up to 36% in the risk of cardiovascular death in adults over 60. Berries rich in anthocyanins, whole oats with beta-glucan, walnuts, and extra virgin olive oil complete the most consistently documented protectors, and none of them are expensive, none are hard to find, and none require a radical transformation of the diet to start making a difference. The foods that most consistently appear as cardiovascular risk accelerators start with processed meats, bacon, sausage, ham, hot dogs, which the International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies as Group 1 carcinogens, and which multiple studies associate with increased heart attack risk through multiple simultaneous mechanisms. The nitrates and nitrites used in curing these meats convert in the body into nitrosamines that damage the vascular endothelium. Sodium in high concentrations raises blood pressure in ways that accumulate over the years. And saturated fats present in large quantities promote vascular inflammation that contributes to the formation and destabilization of plaques. Ultra-processed foods, any product with a list of ingredients you don't recognize as real food, are the second major risk group, and excess added sugar, especially the fructose present in soda and industrial juices, raises triglycerides, promotes insulin resistance, and contributes to vascular inflammation in ways that cardiologists consider as worrying as high cholesterol for long-term arterial health. Cook more at home. Open fewer packages. Use ingredients that you recognize as real food, because every meal prepared at home is a preventive cardiovascular intervention as real as any medication I could prescribe. Tell me in the comments, do you include fatty fish regularly in your diet? And how often do you consume processed meats? Write it here. Now that you know the 3 techniques and the habits that determine heart vulnerability, I need to give you something that will work in a moment of real panic. A clear, simple, and memorable sequence that the brain will be able to access even when the pain is high and fear is trying to take over. Studies published in 2022 showed that people who previously practiced these techniques are 50% more likely to perform them correctly in a real emergency compared to people who only watched or read about them once. 50% because under extreme stress, the brain falls back on what it was physically trained for, not what was only intellectually processed in a moment of peace. The complete sequence is as follows. As soon as the first symptoms appear, call 911 immediately before anything else. Then sit or lie down on the floor immediately. Don't try to walk, don't try to go to the door, don't make any additional physical effort that increases the oxygen demand of a heart that already has a compromised supply. Start forced coughing. Inhale deep, cough hard every 2 seconds for 1 full minute. If the pain is too intense to cough with the necessary force, apply the precordial thump, closed fist, pinky finger side in the center of the sternum, 5 to 6 firm and controlled blows from top to bottom, simultaneously or immediately following. Start stimulating the EGU point. Press the point between thumb and index finger for 5 seconds, pause 2 seconds, repeat for 1 minute on each hand, breathing in the pattern of 4 seconds of inhalation and 6 of exhalation without interrupting. If you have 325 ml aspirin at home and are not allergic, chew 1 tablet while waiting for help. Do not swallow it whole. Aspirin inhibits platelet aggregation in ways that can slow clot formation, but discuss previously with your doctor if it is part of your personal protocol, because people with a history of gastrointestinal bleeding, active ulcer, or using anticoagulants should avoid it. Keep calm as best you can. And I know saying this in a situation where the chest hurts and fear is at its peak seems almost cruel, but panic has a real and measurable cardiovascular cost. Panic increases the heart rate, raises blood pressure, and increases the heart's oxygen consumption, exactly the opposite of what you need when the heart already has a compromised supply. Every slow, deep breath you manage to take is concrete and physiological help for the heart. Tonight, before you sleep, do 3 things. Place a glass of water on your nightstand. Write the 3 techniques in large letters on a sheet of paper and tape it in a visible place. And send this video to at least 1 person you love, a relative who lives alone, a friend over 65, someone whose heart you want to protect as carefully as your own. Tell me in the comments, are you going to practice the 3 techniques today before bed? Write the name of a person you are going to send this video to, because publicly naming who you want to protect is the most powerful commitment you can make now. Mr. Thomas survived, but the life he knew did not survive whole with him. His wife Linda called me 3 days after the hospital discharge crying and asked me a question that still echoes in my mind every time I record a video like this. Doctor, why did no one teach us this before? Not Mr. Thomas, not me, not the children, no one. This information exists. It is in the scientific literature. The paramedics know, the cardiologists know. and yet it didn't reach the porch of that house in Nashville that Tuesday in October. Linda spent the following weeks doing something I had never seen a relative do with that determination. She gathered the couple's two adult children, the son in law, the daughter in law, the two oldest grandchildren, and asked me to personally explain to each of them the three techniques that their father had not used in time. She printed the instructions, laminated them, and taped them on the refrigerator of each of the family's houses. She sent the video to the church WhatsApp group, to Mr. Thomas's friends at the Domino Club, to the neighbors in the community, and in a follow-up appointment 6 months later, she told me with a mixture of pain and pride that the oldest son had used the forced cough when he felt the first symptoms of a heart attack while driving. He had stopped the car, called 911, and applied the technique until help arrived. He arrived at the hospital conscious and with minimal heart damage. The father's tragedy had saved the son's life. This is the reason I make this video, not because the techniques are secrets kept by medicine. They exist in the scientific literature, are taught in emergency protocols in other countries, and paramedics and first responders know them. But they simply don't reach the American living rooms, porches, and kitchens where adults over 60 are every day, often alone, without knowing there is a documented 50% difference in survival chances between those who know what to do and those who don't. Today, you left the group of those who didn't know. You have the three actions: the forced cough, the precordial thump, and the EGU point. You have the morning and evening habits that reduce cardiovascular vulnerability. You have the dietary patterns that build or destroy the arteries that keep the heart alive. And you have the complete protocol that goes from the first symptom to the arrival of help in a sequence that the body will be able to perform even when panic is trying to take over everything. Now I want you to do what Linda did, not out of fear, but out of love. Take your phone right now and send this video to someone you love, a relative who lives alone, a friend over 65, someone you know would have no response if they felt that tightness in their chest home alone. Press the like button. This helps this channel reach more Americans who need this information before the emergency and not after it. Click subscribe now and hit the bell. And in the comments, answer 3 questions. Which of the 3 techniques surprised you most? The name of who you are going to send this video to now, and where you are watching from. Take care of your heart. It works for you every minute of every day without asking for anything in return. Give it the care it deserves. It starts today. It starts now.